But the legacy of the conquest he launched can be seen here in this unique 14th century charter of Waterford. What does this extraordinary series of documents tell us about the Irish relationship with the English crown?
This great charter roll of Waterford could have come from an English city. The earliest contemporary portraits of a king of England that still survive are here in Waterford, a city that is anxious to impress the king and protest their loyalty to him. It is, for all intents and purposes, an English city.
Over the next 50 years, the Anglo-Normans established power bases in the main population centres, and crucially, they moved to set up great estates on the best land in the country. Ireland was about to be transformed. Historically, we've tended to curse the English a great deal, but the Normans did quite a bit for us, didn't they?
If you look around Ireland today, the most characteristically Irish traits are English. Our parliamentary system was brought to Ireland by the Anglo-Normans. The system of law that we have is the English common law system. And of course, the language that has produced most of the great writers of Ireland, Fulf Joyce and the Yeats, is the English language. The division of the country into 32 counties, that process began within about 20 years of the Anglo-Normans. When we look around the countryside in Ireland, we think of fields and hedges, almost non-existent in Ireland before the 12th century. Your classical image of rural Ireland is actually a product of the arrival of the English in the 12th century.
The Normans embraced a Roman tradition which saw conquered races as barbarians. It would become a recurring theme of how the colonists described the Irish. In the English telling of the Irish story, a stock figure starts to emerge. Wild, violent, a buffoon, a creature not of intellect, but of instinct. Now, of course, colonised peoples are referred to in this way in the language of the conqueror across the globe. But in Ireland, the roots of this stereotype lie in the writings of a man who came here not as a soldier, but on a spiritual mission. The 12th century priest and chronicler Giraldus Cambrensis, Gerald of Wales, profiled the Irish in his Topographia Hibernia.
Seated on a throne, he's the classic boring churchman, canon lawyer, great advocate of celibacy, lover of the Pope, lover of the rich, well-connected.
What he does is produce this remarkable book with maps, with drawings, and accounts of the Ireland that he found at that time.
And he says, my book is a mixture of reading books and eyewitness, and therefore has the surety of truth. Of course, just because he says he went to Ireland and saw lots of things doesn't mean he hadn't an agenda.
One of the drawings in here is of a woman having sex with a goat. And it's full of attempts to portray the Irish as barbarous, pernicious, as he puts it himself, wallowing in vice.
Yes.
Here you have a group of men taking part in a kingship ritual.
He doesn't see this as an ancient ritual. This ritual was first described 400 years before this book was produced.
This is the
ritual slaughter of a horse. But he sees this as an example of how they are lawless, they are outside the sphere of Roman law. They have never had the benefits of the Roman Empire, and so they're doing the wildest and most bizarre things you could imagine.
This is a medieval precursor to imperialism and the justifications which one had for imperialism.
The same rhetoric of looking at the unusual behaviour and the unusual rituals of anthropologists in India in the 19th century, that same attitude can be found here.
200 years into the conquest and the colony is unfinished. Beyond the towns, the Anglo-Normans hold no sway. The Irish raid and retreat into the mountains. The Gaelic chiefs saw in the buildings of the Normans the mark of permanence. The colonists had thrown their world, pastoralist based on the loyalties of clan, into retreat. A stone curtain separated English from native. The old aristocracy seethed with resentment. The Irish chieftains decide to launch Ireland's first diplomatic mission, appealing for help to the most powerful figure in Christendom. As it was a pope who'd first given legal sanction for the invasion of Ireland, it was to Rome that the Irish chiefs now complained about their unjust treatment at the hands of the colonists. Written in 1317, their document is known as the Remonstrance of the Princes. Tell me what we see in this document.
This is the worst picture of English rule since the invasion.
Not a document that minces words, is it?
It certainly isn't. It talks about how the Irish are savaged by the vicious teeth of the English and have fallen into an abyss of slavery. It's very, very vivid imagery. Well, there's one particularly gruesome example where Thomas de Clare has had a banquet with one of the Gaelic rulers, and at the end of the banquet he is taken from the table and his head is amputated.
Amputato quoque capite.
Exactly, yeah.
And this is being sent to the Pope.
Exactly.
This is what the English are doing to us.
Yeah.
But Irish complaints were of little matter in Rome. The Pope passed the document to King Edward II, who did nothing. The simple truth was that English kings, mired in struggles of their own, were little bothered with Ireland. English influence remained strong in the fertile area around Dublin and North Leinster, lands they called the Pale. Until, as would happen so often, the stories of other places collided with that of Ireland. The first was war. A Scottish army fighting the English opened a new front here in Ireland. But the worst disaster of all arrived here at the port of Howth in July 1348. The Black Plague ravaged the towns and ports where the Anglo-Normans were strongest. A witness described how the disease would carry off a man, his wife, and their children, all, as he put it, in the common way of death. Many of the English lords began to abandon their castles and lands and fled back to England. Others had their property forcibly taken as the Gaelic lords exploited English weakness. What we see in this period is a resurgent Gaelic chiefdom. People are coming back, taking lands abandoned by the Anglo-Norman overlords. It seems like a real cultural renaissance of a people who feel confident in themselves again.
What we see is a regrouping. From 1150, we have basically no Irish manuscripts, no Gaelic manuscripts. But from 1350, we have a large number of very well decorated, very beautifully put together manuscripts. But there does seem to be a century during which the Gaelic aristocracy and the Gaelic learned classes are trying to find new ways of asserting their cultural distinctiveness.
Dá mátaí an dáin a ghuine, gan seanchas gan seanlí, go brach ahar gach fir, rochi coich gan a chlinshin. Why in this period does poetry assume such importance?
In the unstable political climate of Ireland at this time, art or gold work or tapestry might not be such a good investment. But in terms of securing your status, securing your fame, a poem can travel across the entire Gaelic world from Kerry to the Hebrides. When O'Neill comes to London, someone observes with distaste that his poets are sitting with him at the same table and eating from the same dish. We get these glimpses sometimes of Gaelic custom and the high status accorded to the poet.
As Gaelic Ireland revives, the English colony retreats. There are a few military expeditions by the Crown and an attempt to separate English and Irish by law. But Ireland simply isn't a strategic priority. Until, near the end of the 15th century, the Crown is given a rude awakening. After years of civil war in England, two different pretenders to the throne attack from Ireland, supported by Irish lords. In their castles, the lords were local emperors. There was no strong central government to contain them. London might as well have been the moon for all the real influence the monarch could bring to bear. The great Anglo-Norman families had symbolised English power. But now they could make alliances with Gaelic chiefs. Over 3 centuries, they'd become, if not entirely Irish, certainly no longer truly English. This is an unsettled land where warlords squabble and London's writ does not run. But the ascent to the throne of a new king in 1509 will bring about the most concerted attempt yet to subdue the Irish lords. Henry VIII will come to see these free-roving lords as a threat to his power and men who need to be taught a lesson. Henry sought to create the state ruled by a single king that had eluded Brian Boru and Dermot MacMurrough. The first ever united Ireland, but under the control of an English king and his officials. Under the centralising rule of the Tudors, Ireland will no longer be a wild colonial fringe, where Old English and Gaelic lords rule themselves.
Here is an English administration coming along saying, I'll tell you what, we'll tidy this up for you. We will impose a legal framework in which your position will not be threatened at all. You'll continue to be local, regional boss. You'll continue to have this wealth that you treasure so much, but we'll do this by legal means.
But such promises failed to impress the powerful Fitzgeralds, the Old English lords of Kildare. They'd been the king's representatives in Ireland. Now they saw their power slipping away. In 1534 they rebelled. Just as he had done with the troublesome lords in England, Henry crushed them ruthlessly. As the Tower of London beckoned to any troublesome nobles, Henry declared himself King of Ireland. But Henry would never settle his Irish problem, for at home he was moving towards a fateful entanglement. Henry's enduring legacy to Ireland was forged in the chambers of his court. There, a domestic imperative propelled him into action that would profoundly change the way the Irish and the English saw each other. Henry had failed to obtain a male heir from his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. In 1533, he disobeyed the Pope by divorcing Catherine and marrying Anne Boleyn. Henry created the Church of England with himself at its head. In this manner, England joined the great European Reformation, the Protestant Revolution, which was already challenging church corruption, doctrine, and the power of the papacy. Henry imposed his new church on a reluctant English clergy through terror and the seizing of church lands. But in Ireland he lacked a standing army that could enforce observance of the new faith. and so Ireland remained Catholic.